Good people, what is going on? Another episode of the All Go Podcast. I'm your host, Desmond. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. A couple topics wanted to get into. Uh, One is Trevor Lawrence and some tea leaves that we had earlier in his career, but just kind of overlooked. Michigan recruiting and just kind of where they stand today, and then the Detroit Lions preview, in which I'll start there with the Lions. They play tomorrow, Sunday Night Football, which is pretty cool to have that national spotlight and that stage as far as the Lions go. They are currently, is it 7-1, 8-1? 7-1, 8-1, number one seed currently in the NFC. Last game they played the Packers and beat them 24-14. It seems like a lot has happened since then because of the trade deadline, but obviously the Lions added Zadarius Smith, and also in this game, which it sounds like Zadarius is going to play. I mean, I don't, nothing I've heard, makes me think that he won't play. Also, I mean, he was playing already. It's not like he was coming off an injury or anything like that. So I don't see why he wouldn't play. Also, the Lions get back Jamison Williams, who is our big play threat. We were pretty fortunate that we ended up winning both of those games without him. I had no concerns with him missing the Titans game. And with Green Bay, I was a little iffy, honestly. Like, man, Green Bay's a good team, so really thought we could have used him before the game. And then obviously the game happened, and we did okay without him. But it'll be nice to have him back and get our deep play receiver back. But I feel really good about this game. I was talking to one of my friends, Dre, who may end up being on the channel at some point, but I've shifted my mindset and my thought process on the Lions, because if you've been a Lions fan for really any real stretch of time, this is uncharted territory. I'm 38 years old, so from the time I can really remember seeing football and watching football, for the most part, the Lions have been bad the entire time. They've had a couple like good years with Stafford and just kind of some. I'm not sure I can even say Cinderella story or Cinderella type seasons, but we had seasons with Sean Hill was our quarterback, Mike McMahon. With Sean Hill, he was able to win a couple games, and he was also a fan favorite as well. But it's never been anything of any real sustained success. We had a playoff year with Stafford. I think we went 11-5 and lost to the Saints. And then the next year, I think we missed the playoffs and then made it again, but we were never really, looked at as any real type of juggernaut. And now I think I'm at the point now where I'm ready to just say, listen, we're a really, 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 really good football team. I would say borderline great team. I'm not sure I'm ready to make that jump yet, but the Lions are a really good team. And I'm expecting us to win. The Houston Texans are a really good team as well. So it's not one of those things where I think we can just show up and just think that, Houston's going to roll over. With the quarterback as talented as CJ Stroud, you can never, let your foot off the gas or relax. You've got to attack him. But I expect the Lions to play well. I expect them to win. We're going to be indoors, which is a benefit for us. We're a pretty, well, I guess we could play indoors or outdoors, but we're used to playing, in a dome and on turf. So I'm fully expecting us to play really well. They've heard a lot with Houston that their offensive guards haven't been playing very well, and as far as pass protection goes, which for the Lions I think bodes really well, specifically for Aleem McNeil. Because he is terrific at getting an interior pass rush. He doesn't get a ton of sacks, but he collapses the pocket. He does a great job of that. So if they have some issues at guard, and one of our better interior pass rushers can just play the way he's always been has played, I think that bodes a recipe for success for us and a bit of a disaster for Houston. And then hopefully with Zadarius Smith being added to the team, that he can get some timely pass rushes and hopefully sacks. I think with Zadarius Smith, I don't think it's important for him to get 10 or 12 sacks. Obviously, would love to have that. But really a lot of it is just getting pressure on the quarterback, like just making him nervous, knocking down the quarterback, hitting him, getting to him, here and there. Because I think Hutch did that as far as the pressures, but he also did get home quite a bit too. I mean, he was on a historic pace as far as sacks go. I think 7.5 sacks, which he's still, I believe, top 5 in the NFL in sacks. Which is unreal because he's missed 3 games now? I think 3 games, but he's been terrific. So that's my hope for Zadarius is at least if he can just provide pressure, because we know just about every quarterback in the NFL is worse when they are pressured consistently, and I'm hoping that Zadarius can come in and add that element for us that we've been missing, because even with beating Green Bay, I mean, we gave up 6 points for most of that game. I think they scored that last touchdown in the fourth quarter, which made it 14. But I mean, giving up 6 for 3 quarters or 3.5 quarters, whatever it was, that's pretty impressive for a defense. And then also on top of it, the defense scored a touchdown as well. So we were, the defense had 7 and only gave up 6 for up to that point. So that was impressive. But I think we definitely need to have some pressure if we're going to go the places that I think all Lions fans want us to go, which is the Super Bowl. But I don't think you can get there without pressuring the quarterback at least a decently high clip. So we'll see what goes on there. I'm predicting score-wise, I'm going to go 31-14 Lions. I'm expecting a dominant win. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Texans are coming off a loss to the Jets last Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think, I mean, we're just a big physical team. We're explosive, and the defense has been playing really well. Mainly on the scoring defense has been really, really good. And playing against the run, we've been terrific. I think our pass numbers are skewed a bit just because in general, I mean, we've had the lead in most of the games that we've played in. And that's just going to naturally lead to a team throwing the ball, trying to play catch up and get back in the game. But yeah, I'm expecting a big game. That's what I have come to expect now from the Detroit Lions. It is just a really good team, come out, play well, and dominate. Michigan recruiting, specifically talking about Bryce Underwood, is, if you're a Michigan fan, you obviously are probably already aware of Bryce Underwood is quarterback from Belleville, super talented kid. And he is, as of now, committed to LSU. And now in the big NIL push that Michigan is having, there's been just talks and rumors that Michigan is willing to match whatever LSU did and, pay even more than that. They're really, it seems, are being really aggressive when it comes to NIL. And that just wasn't there, as new as NIL is. Michigan just wasn't one of the schools or the programs that was aggressive when it comes to NIL. They were really specific. They went and got kind of what they felt were their guys and seemingly didn't want to get into like any type of like bidding war or anything like that when it comes to NIL. And it seems that they have changed their tune with that. We'll see. Obviously, you can have those rumors out there. Oh, we're willing to offer $5 million, but it's until you actually get one of those guys. Like I find it difficult to believe it without seeing any actual like results of it. But then that's separate from the Underwood recruitment. But it's interesting because you hear a lot of rumors that, Michigan's making a big push and he was on campus a week or two ago. But it was like really secretive and, he was in his own area, but no one really saw him as far as kind of the public goes. And that all may be true. I have no idea. I'm not, any type of insider or have any insider info. But the reason, my thought on the recruitment is when you look at the state of what Michigan football is today, I'm not sure why a quarterback as talented as Bryce Underwood would come to Michigan. And that sounds like I'm bashing Michigan, but like when you really kind of break it down of where Michigan is today, I mean, this is not, Jim Harbaugh is not coaching this team anymore. He is gone and doing a terrific job actually with the Chargers. And he's taken some coaches with him. But from the beginning with Sharon Moore, this hasn't looked like a well-oiled operation. And in my thought is even with a first-year head coach, it probably wasn't going to look a flawless operation, but it's got to look better than this. Is my thought. The quarterback situation has been an absolute mess, and I think Michigan did an awful job of handling the quarterback situation. To me, it makes the most sense to go through a training camp or really the spring and to figure out who the quarterback is going to be. So that way, when it comes to training camp, those are valuable reps. The 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks that you have of training camp is extremely valuable. And for my philosophy on it is I don't want to waste reps trying to figure out who the quarterback is. Now, you don't get to control that all the time, so I do understand that. But having one guy taking 500 reps or whatever the case may be through the course of a training camp is so much more valuable than two guys taking the 500 collectively. Like one guy getting 250, the other guy getting 250, because you get used to the plays, how your coach likes to call the plays. You just get used to that, and it's just super helpful to have those reps because that's how you get better. I don't think that's any breaking news, but also when it comes to the games as well, guys get a lot better with game experience. And the fact that you had, I think Davis Warren started the first game and did not look great. And I believe he was benched the second half of the second game. And you've had 3 quarterbacks play already in the season. And this was even, before this past game. So you're missing out on not only the training camp reps, but now you're missing out on the game reps where guys can develop and get a lot better. And the operation just doesn't look right. I don't think they have the correct offensive coordinator with Kirk Campbell. To me, Sharon Moore obviously was hired in as a first-year head coach, but your strength was calling plays. I thought Sharon Moore was a pretty darn good offensive coordinator, but now when you remove that strength, what you're losing out on one of the advantages that you had. Like it's similar with the Jets and Robert Saleh before he was fired. It's like you're a really good defensive coordinator with the 49ers, and then you come here to the Jets and you're not going to call the defense. Like I understand you have to have you're now the head coach, so you're over all of the operation. So you can't just totally isolate and be away from the offense. But that's your strength is calling the defense. And for Sharon Moore, that was the strength of his, is calling the offense. So now you not only have a first-year head coach, but now you also have a first-year offensive coordinator as well. And to me, that leads to the offensive performance that you have seen from the Michigan Wolverines. And to me, it looks like dysfunction might be a line too far, but it just looks chaotic. And and last week actually against Oregon, Davis Warren looked much better. But it makes me think and makes me wonder, how would he have looked had from game 1 to now, him being the starting quarterback the entire time? Because part of the quarterback battle that we've seen time and time again is guys are afraid to play free because the fear of, well, if I throw an interception or make a mistake, I'm going to get benched. So now you don't actually get the best of that quarterback because you need them to play free. They need to, if you see it, rip it, man. Like you can't be gun shy and scared to make a mistake, because that's where the big and explosive plays are. Is there is a level of risk to it. You've got to throw the ball down the field. Sometimes you got to throw a 50-50 ball, to one of your receivers. You just have to do those things. It's part of football. Making mistakes is part of it. And I don't think you get the best out of your quarterbacks when they aren't playing free. They're thinking too much. They're scared to make a decision. They don't want to get benched. They don't want to get pulled. And you just don't get the best out of them. And then defensively, I mean, I'm not sure there's any Michigan fans who are happy with the performance that Wink Martindale has had. He's got talented guys on that defense, and it hasn't looked right. And I say all that to say, why would a guy like Bryce Underwood want to come into that chaotic situation? When you look at it, I mean, I don't know. And like I said, I'm not an insider or anything like that. I'm not sure Wink Martindale is going to come back next year. The defense has been bad. It's been bad enough to where I could see a scenario where he doesn't come back. But Jerome Moore is once again a first-year head coach, so I don't know if he feels great on making a decision like that. The offense looked better in the Oregon game, and a lot of that I think was Davis Warren, but when you look at that compared to LSU, which however you feel about Brian Kelly, I'm actually not a Brian Kelly fan, but he's a really good coach, and the operation at LSU has not looked anything close to the operation at Michigan. And now I'm taking just the Jerome Moore tenure, because not that you wipe the Jim Harbaugh tenure off the board, but he's just not there anymore. He's not the one running Michigan football any longer. So just specifically zoning in on the Jerome Moore tenure so far, it just hasn't looked right, hasn't looked great. And then you kind of turn the page and look at LSU, and they haven't been flawless or undefeated by any stretch, but I mean, Brian Kelly's first year, they end up beating Alabama. They go to the SEC championship game. What was that, a 9-win season, if I'm not mistaken? You end up having, I know last year with Jaden Daniels, they didn't have the season they were hoping for. Lost, I think, 3 or 4 games. But, the number 1 or the number 2 draft pick, Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, it's kind of difficult to look at those scenarios and say, yeah, it's just solely just about money, because granted, the difference of $6 million and $3 million, that's a pretty large difference. And I'm literally just putting those numbers out. I don't know, what he's been offered, but the difference, when you think about it, the difference of me being offered, let's say, for example, $3 million versus $4 million, right? That's it. For a normal person like me, that's a huge difference. But for someone with the future outlook earnings of a Bryce Underwood, right? He's projected to play in the NFL. That's typically what a 5-star evaluation means, is this guy is projected to be a first-round draft pick. So for someone with those type of future earnings, it's like, okay, well, a difference of $1 million when you talk about 3 years, because that's what most of these quarterbacks are, basically as soon as they're eligible, as long as they've had a good season or 2, they're going to the NFL. So for Bryce Underwood, it's like, okay, a difference of $1 million is not that large when you then look at LSU has produced in 2019, I believe that was Joe Burrow, number 1 pick. He won the Heisman that year, if I'm not mistaken. Nonetheless, right, 2019 number 1 draft pick, and then just 4 years later, 2023, another number 2 draft pick at the same quarterback position. So when you look at that and juxtapose it with Michigan, who, of course, J.J. McCarthy was a number 1 draft pick last season, but also before that, what was the last first-round quarterback that they had? Nothing comes to mind. I mean, would have to, really like kind of dig into it. But, so you do have that recent example with JJ, but also too, when you think about it, you could argue that JJ's probably the most talented quarterback that Michigan's had in their, since they've been there, or, in their recent history, let's just put it that way. And I mean, and JJ averaged roughly about 22 pass attempts a game. Like, I know Michigan was a running team, and that's how they, won a national championship. It was a run first offense, and then JJ, made some really timely throws, especially in the playoffs. So he was terrific. So not taking anything away from him, but my point is he didn't really get a chance to really showcase his talent and his skill as far as just from a passing perspective. He had a game here and there where he did, but in general, that doesn't bode well for trying to be a number one pick or just being drafted as high as you possibly can. So that's where I'm kind of torn on. Like I said, I don't know what each team has offered. I don't really get into the weeds that much on it, but my concern would be that is just what proof do you have that you have developed quarterback and are able to put a quarterback in the in the NFL, because also too, if we also remove JJ solely because Jim Harbaugh was the head coach when JJ was the quarterback. Under the Sharon Moore tenure, they haven't done a great job of managing the quarterback position. I don't think they did a great job of putting their quarterbacks in positions to succeed. The only caveat to that might be the Alex Orji against USC. Granted, he threw the ball for 32 yards, but that was in Michigan's best interest to go and win that game. So it's just difficult for me to see a guy who, like I said, I don't know him personally or anything like that, but it would be difficult to see, what's going on in Ann Arbor under the Sharon Moore tenure and to think like, okay, cool, I'm going to put myself in that, in that scenario, that environment. And also too, for quarterbacks, you need guys to come along and help you as well. Right. And LSU has a list of guys from, if you want to start, with 5 years ago with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors. I mean, the list goes on as far as LSU pass catchers and guys that are going to help you be successful. So it's difficult. It's tough. So we will see what happens. Obviously, the decision is going to unfold. We will get finality to it. Not sure when, what is it? February, I think, is early signing day. So we're a couple months out from that. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, not quite sure, but I mean, if I had to guess, I would say he probably just continues his commitment to LSU and probably goes there. So we'll see. Last thing I want to cover is Trevor Lawrence. He has not looked great this season. Reports are it sounds like he's got an injured shoulder, may have surgery, and may actually be done for the season. And it leaves a lot of people asking questions like, what is going on with Trevor Lawrence? If you're a football fan, his history, in the state of Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Georgia or South Carolina? Anywho, the Gatorade Player of the Year, was terrific. Came in at Clemson as a true freshman. Split time for the first 4 weeks of the season with Kelly Bryant. Kelly Bryant ends up transferring. Trevor Lawrence named the starter. Clemson goes on to win the national championship that year. They actually kicked Alabama's butts in the national championship, 44-18, if I'm not mistaken. Trevor just tears it up, does a really terrific job. They end up, oddly enough, not going back to the national championship in his last 2 years. But yeah, goes to the NFL. His first year, he has Urban Meyer as a head coach, who was an absolute disaster as a head coach with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Don't need to get into that. That's been well documented. And then Trevor, his second year, if I'm not mistaken, is when they end up having a pretty big, a good run, towards the end of the season. And then they played the Chargers and end up winning that playoff game. He threw, I think, 3 or 4 interceptions in the first half, ends up coming back, and they won the game, which it was pretty unreal second half that he had. But honestly, since that moment and moving forward, he just he's not played consistently. He's a huge dude, looks great. I think he's like 6'5", 6'6", so huge guy. And it's clear he's talented, but something is just not clicking for him as far as with his consistency and his decision making. And honestly, I think that with Trevor Lawrence, I think before he was even drafted, I think we heard why. In my opinion, he's not getting to those levels that everyone thought he would be, that he was projected to be. During the draft process with Trevor Lawrence, I believe that was the year Zach Wilson, also Justin Fields were drafted as well. During the pre-draft process, someone had asked Trevor if football was like, kind of his all, his, end all be all kind of, question, like, hey, are you, do you love it? And so on and so forth. And he had an answer, and I'm paraphrasing that, football is not, my entire life. Like it, if I don't, play football or, so on and so forth, my life would be just fine. Something to that effect. And I just don't think you can be a successful quarterback in the NFL with that type of approach to it. Like, it is something that you have to be absolutely obsessed with, because Trevor Lawrence is clearly, when you're talking just talent, like just how big is he, how arm strength, can he move, so on and so forth. I mean, he literally checks every box. He's not a 240 guy where he can outrun everybody, but he's definitely not a statue. The dude can move. But you think about quarterbacks who are super talented. Trevor's in that group. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Those guys, as far as a talent perspective, are elite in the talent perspective. And those other guys removing Trevor from it, are all obsessed with it. Because you have to be. You're just not. No one is good enough to just be talented in the NFL and just think you're just gonna to be successful. The amount of work that you have to put into it, studying what defenses are going to do, understanding your playbook, the things that you have to put your body through as far as nutrition, weightlifting, recovery. There's just so much that goes into it that you cannot be a guy who's not going to be obsessed with it, because number one, they pay you way too much money for you to not be obsessed with it. Like, if you were an owner of a team, would you feel comfortable paying a guy, $55 million per year who's not obsessed with it? You can't be successful with that. And I did a video years ago, and basically the video was, if Justin Fields had said something like that, he would be getting crushed. But Trevor Lawrence is not, and it seems to be okay. And I actually made link that video in the description. But if you're not obsessed with it at this point, Trevor, I think you need to get obsessed with it, because you've got some time here. If you do in fact have the surgery and your season's done, where next year you can come in and really perform the way that I think Trevor probably wants to perform. So we'll see what happens. Definitely root for the guy. No reason to not root for him. But yeah, you've got to be obsessed with this. In the NFL, guys are too great. You've got defensive coordinators who are obsessed with it, that are literally scheming things up to get you to make mistakes and to get you to not be successful. So you got to be on it. But that is it for me. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. And that's it. Peace.